Hi, my name is Michael Harrison, and I'm a retired anaesthetist. The software I'm about to describe is designed to collect physiological data from a standard anaesthetic monitor, recognize patterns in the data, and suggest diagnoses. In publications over the years that have assessed some of the modules, the name of the software has changed. Initially, it was EBMI, Evidence-Based Monitoring, Interactive. It is now EDDI, Early Detection Diagnostic Information. EDDI is software. It needs no special electronic box or disposables. It is what I term a simple form of artificial intelligence. It is based on if-then rules and is fully deterministic. It is not a black box where the internal data pathways are unknown. The algorithms are based on well-established physiological knowledge combined with the changes that take place during anaesthesia. For example, changes in respiratory gases when the lungs are ventilated. It can modify some outputs if the anaesthetic is totally intravenous, regional. The software suggests diagnoses or provides a warning. It does not suggest treatment. That is solely in the hand of the clinician. As previously stated, EDDI is not a black box with unpredictable outputs. Neither is it connected directly to the patient. It is connected to the normal anaesthetic monitor by a cable. Depending on the circumstances, it could be a USB or an Ethernet connection. It is not connected to the internet, and it does not need to be connected to the internet. It is a completely standalone system. Depending on local systems, it could be connected to a local server. I will stress again, it does not suggest a management plan. The anaesthetist is in sole charge of the patient's treatment. Neither does it replace the anaesthetic monitor. EDDI has the ability to recognize patterns in the physiological data that suggests some adverse events. When you think of blood pressure in the various patients you manage, you might ask how EDDI can cope with the variation between patients. Most of EDDI's algorithms deal with changes in variables, not their absolute values. When the possibility of an adverse event is detected, the nature of the possible event is announced in plain English or Mandarin and by a time-stamped text message on screen. The data from the monitor is updated every 10 seconds, but if the adverse condition still exists, the notification is not repeated as this is distracting. It will be repeated after 5 minutes if the condition still exists. The physiological data will be stored and saved to a file, as will the diagnostic data. These stored data can be used to replay the anaesthetic for teaching or for review. There are no patient identifying data in these files. These are the diagnoses programmed to date. Hypovolemia is suggested when a significant change takes place in the blood pressure, heart rate, and pulse volume, and is reinforced if the respiratory-associated pulse pressure variation is high. This is only operative in the presence of invasive pressure monitoring, IPPV, and an undamped arterial trace. The hypovolemia alert can be activated at the onset of an epidural or spinal block. Blood pressure may fall, heart rate may rise at the onset of surgery, and the pulse oximeter positioned on a finger may indicate vasoconstriction, as it is not affected by the block. A decrease in cardiac output associated with hypovolemia is diagnosed by detecting a significant fall in end-tidal CO2 in the presence of steady ventilation. The changes in CO2 are subtle and would require vigilance and a keen eye to detect the early changes. Inadequate analgesia is inferred from a sympathetic response. Again, significant changes in blood pressure, heart rate, and pulse volume. The MAC value of the anesthetic mixture is assessed, taking into account the age and temperature of the patient. The algorithm for the detection of MH is based on the time series data of 3 known cases. It is impossible to say whether it will detect all cases, as the presentations can vary, and it has not been used in the presence of an MH episode. Laparoscopy. Now, laparoscopy at the beginning has some features of MH. With the inflation of the abdomen with CO2, end-tidal CO2 rises, as does blood pressure and heart rate, just the onset of surgery. So just for a very short time, these are the signatures of MH. It would be easy to suppress the diagnosis of MH, but it is possible a patient having a laparoscopy could develop MH. I think that the duration of the MH-like changes are unlikely to cause an alert, but it is possible. The Cushing response, reflecting my past practice in neuroanesthesia, has a short time window for detection because it is an acute response. It is uncommon, and the standard monitor should pick up the changes if the alarm settings are appropriate for bradycardia and hypertension. Hypotension alerts are customized and are dependent on some comorbidities. These elements are selected at the beginning of the session, as you will see shortly. The last item is very specialized and was created as a response to a conversation with a cardiac anaesthetist. Here is an example of hypovolemia with a fall in cardiac output. The heart rate rises, MAP goes down, and the pulse volume decreases. At 9:03, the end-tidal CO2 starts to fall. And if you remember your respiratory gas kinetics, you can see that with the fall in cardiac output, the anesthetic concentration rises. Here is one of the first screens. On the left will be where the text alerts are printed. The initial message states that no analysis will start until there is a steady respiratory signal. Suppresses any analysis until the induction and intubation period are over. As we know, during this period, there are many very variable physiological changes. The blue boxes contain the abbreviations for the physiological changes. If the change is significant, they turn an orange color. In the top row, if they all turn orange, then the suggested diagnosis is hypovolemia. The central bar represents the respiratory-associated pulse pressure variation. A value above 14% is generally considered an indication of hypovolemia. Below that, we have a crude audit tool. Click on the patient details and it takes us to the next screen. This is self-explanatory. Select the items appropriately and move the slider to indicate age. This screen can be skipped and the default age will be 40 years. Here we have an example of the software in action. This is an offline video. It uses a previously saved file. It also goes very fast because you would not wish to sit through the process in real time. The alerts may seem to be rapid, but that is the nature of the speed of the replay.
There has been a significant sympathetic response.
Hypovolemia is possible. The cardiac output may have fallen. Hypovolemia is possible. The cardiac output may have fallen. The blood pressure is low for this patient. Hypovolemia is possible. The cardiac output may have fallen. The blood pressure is low for this patient.
Some of EDDI's limitations have been covered, but here is a summary. MH is untested because of its rarity, and there is a possibility that at the beginning of laparoscopy, an MH alert could be generated. We do have a database for the blood pressure changes in children, but at the moment it is only programmed for adults. The program was constructed primarily for major surgery and the use of invasive arterial pressure monitoring. We do have NIBP incorporated into the system, but it is less fully tested. It can only assess what is programmed to assess, and we have covered the possible diagnostic suggestions. Here is a safer sleep printout with which you are probably familiar. As you know, in complex cases, the physiological variables can be all over the place, including artifacts. EDDI has a built-in artifact rejection analysis system. And, for example, the heart rate measurement is very robust. Heart rate is taken from 3 sources: the ECG, the blood pressure measuring system, and the pulse oximeter. All 3 would have to fail. If they did, there would have to be a 5-minute recovery period before full analysis could continue. EDDI makes a great partner with Safer Sleep. Safer Sleep checks the drug administration, amongst other things, and EDDI provides early diagnostics of adverse events. Things have changed a lot since I started, but we still have a long way to go. Thank you for listening.